Hey everyone, it's Jack from WhatCulture.com, fresh as a daisy from the live stream. You might have saw how tired I was last night if you did see the stream, but I've had a bit of Calpol and I've had some Dairy Lunchables for my lunch, so I'm good to go. So let's look at all the ups and downs from last night's first ever edition of SmackDown Live, the Draft Special. Now first up, we start off, I'm afraid, with a down, and this concerns the bland presentation. Normally, you know, WWE in the past have pulled out various stops to make the draft night seem special and exciting and different and fresh. This was very sort of sterile, very generic looking. You had the SmackDown podium on one side of the stage, the Raw podium on the other side of the stage. Nothing really happened, there wasn't a great deal of interaction. The backstage segments were kind of samey and boring. It really didn't seem any different to your sort of bog standard edition of Raw or SmackDown, just with the exception of the two podiums on the stage, really. I'm afraid that's a down. Next we have an up, because in fairness to WWE, all 5 of the first 5 draft picks made sense. Seth Rollins went first to Raw. That makes sense because Stephanie's obviously arrogant and heelish enough to assume that he's going to win at Battleground and bring the championship over to her side of the brand split. You had Dean Ambrose. Shane obviously has faith in his guy in taking the current WWE champion over to SmackDown. Third, you had Charlotte. In real life, there's obviously a lot of superstars on a bigger level to Charlotte, but in kayfabe, it makes sense for Stephanie and Foley to want to really capitalise on the women's champion and put the women's division on a higher platform. AJ Styles, new to WWE, exciting, dynamic, you know, makes perfect sense for him to go to SmackDown. And finally, of course, the Demon Finn Balor, another one for the future. Really demonstrates sort of WWE pushing this whole new era thing. All 5 of those first picks, to me, made perfect sense. Then we had our first match of the night, Johnny Cena, boy, v Luki Wookie Gallows. This was a squash, wasn't it, really? Gallows got quite a lot of offense in, but once Cena hit his moves, there was no stopping him. The club tried to get involved and Enzo and Cass easily dispatched them. Cena hit the attitude adjustment, 1, 2, 3. Man, Gallows looks pretty weak going into Battleground. That's a down if I didn't mention that already. Now we move on to Darren Young. Man, who would have thought that his push would be one of the best things in the current mid-card scene? Because he used Bob Backlund's crossface chicken wing. His manager now, obviously, he's passed that move down to him. And I've got no complaints about that. Sure, you could argue he made the secondary champion in the company, The Miz, tap out clean, which isn't a great look going into their pay-per-view match. And I don't expect him to win that match, but, you know, from the awful start of the Darren Young angle with those really cringeworthy vignettes to now, the growth has just been fantastic, so that's definitely an up for me. Now we move on to possibly the most baffling booking decision of the whole show. Not Mojo Rawley's draft, that came after the show, but that certainly had us wondering what the hell was going on. But Kane came out for his match against Kevin Owens, and the match never took place because Sami Zayn came out and Owens and Zayn did their thing, which is getting a little bit tiresome now. Hopefully they get a bit more meaning behind their feud after their match at Battleground. We know that the feud's not going to end, they're going to fight forever. Owens and Zayn then hit the ring, and Kane double chokeslammed both and stood tall. This is Kane, who's now been in the company for almost 20 years, just easily dispatching 2 of the newest, most exciting guys on the roster. It's the same old, isn't it, really? I'm afraid that's down. And then, of course, because this makes perfect sense, Foley and Stephanie saw this. They saw Sami Zayn get easily taken out by one chokeslam, and they thought, we'll have him, we'll pick him for Raw. Oh, really doesn't make any sense. Next up, we saw that Sasha Banks was drafted to Raw and Becky Lynch was drafted to SmackDown, and it became apparent that they haven't made the women's division exclusive to one single draft. I think, and we had quite a debate about this last night on the live stream, and as much as it goes against every fibre of my being and my moral code, I have to side with Adam Blompier. I think they should have kept the women's division exclusive to one brand or the other. The women's division isn't yet strong enough. I'm not saying that the female superstars shouldn't be judged on the same level as the male ones, but at the minute the women's division isn't deep enough or strong enough to be treated as such. It needs to be exclusive to one brand, like the cruiserweights kind of, so there can be a series of closely connected feuds and storylines. You know the rest of it. I'm just explaining stuff to you that you already understand. The women's division really shouldn't be split. It's too thin a female roster. That's a down. Now we come to Jericho v Cesaro, and the finish of that match was easily spot of the night. Cesaro did that ridiculous springboard uppercut that he makes look so easy, and I just want you to imagine for a second trying that. Can you imagine me trying that? Can you imagine how many takes it would take for us to successfully do that? I don't think we even could. We'd all do ourselves a mischief. Cesaro, of course, nails it, turns around, you think he's going to blast Jericho with the uppercut, straight into the code breaker, 1, 2, 3. What a fantastic, inch-perfect finish to the match. That's definitely enough. But now we move straight on to a down, because if you look at it, Cesaro's just lost clean. And, you know, for the past few months we were thinking, since Cesaro returned, could he be maybe breaking into the main event scene? And now you've got to worry that he's on that same old slide again that we've seen him be on 2 or 3 times now in his WWE career. It's the same old argument every time. We all know that he's one of the most insanely talented wrestlers on the roster, and he never quite gets given that break, and I hope this was just an anomaly, and I hope that his upward momentum continues. Next up though, Neville's back, the Toon Boy, YI and all that, mate. That's lost on so many people out there. But, you know, Neville, from Newcastle of course, is back on the main roster, he's back from injury. Always fantastic to see, and he's been drafted to Raw, where we know all the cruiserweights are going to be knocking about. This is incredibly promising for Neville. It was heartbreaking for him to get that injury so close to WrestleMania. He obviously missed WrestleMania, but now everything's looking up. Hopefully he makes the most of this opportunity. Now we got on to the main event, and as many of you may know, I am a shameless Seth Rollins fan. I love him, and I hope one day to marry him. However, he lost clean in the main event, and my gut instinct, because he's my future husband, was, oh no, he's lost clean. Why have they done that? Why have they made Ambrose look stronger than him? And then it all sort of clicked in my mind, and I thought, no, this was the perfect booking. Ambrose hasn't really been portrayed as the strongest of champions, especially after all the weird stuff that went down on Raw. So this was a much needed clean win. Yes, it was against the man he'll be facing on Sunday, or one of the men he'll be facing on Sunday, but I think it was a risk that paid off. It makes Ambrose look strong, and it makes Rollins look a little bit weak, which is all right, because he's just come off the back of a massive victory over Roman Reigns, obviously before Ambrose cashed in. All 3 members of the Shield are kind of on an even level now, and we're going into the main event of Sunday's pay-per-view not knowing what's going to happen, so this was executed to a T. That's certainly enough. So that was the end of the show. Now just a couple of general points, which are also going to count as ups and downs. No Nakamura and no Bailey. This doesn't really make sense from a kayfabe point of view. Yes, in real life you could say, brilliant, you know, they're saving Nakamura, maybe you'll have a brilliant title run in NXT. Brilliant, they're saving Bailey, maybe she'll be Sasha Banks' mystery partner on Sunday. And I can totally understand those points, but in terms of kayfabe, the logic isn't really there. Why on earth would Shane, Foley and Daniel Bryan overlook superstars that we've been conditioned to recognise as badasses, and they are as well, to be fair to them, and instead pick people like The Golden Truth, Mojo Rawley, Big Show? You know, like, even in kayfabe terms, Nakamura and Bailey are meant to be on a far superior level to those kind of wrestlers. And as disappointing as it is not to see them in the draft, that's not my main concern. My main concern is, in kayfabe terms, it makes no sense. And finally, another sort of general look at the show. This is another down. The SmackDown's been shafted, hasn't it, lads? SmackDown's been absolutely shafted. Yes, it's got AJ Styles. Yes, it's got John Cena. Yes, it's got Dean Ambrose, the WWE champion, although we don't know if he'll be the champion after Sunday. But the show is just Raw's little brother still, isn't it? Now, Raw has obviously got the cruiserweights. They've split the tag division. They've split the women's division. SmackDown is kind of, there's nothing to set it apart. It's not going to be like the days of the Ruthless Aggression era, where, you know, SmackDown had the SmackDown 6, it was the work rate show. Now it seems to be just a diluted underdog version of Raw, which in many respects it always has been. And I think a lot of us were hoping for a lot more change last night than we actually got. So that's all we've got time for on Ups and Downs this week. As you can see, the Downs have won. I don't think that's too much of a surprise to anyone. From what I've looked at on the internet since last night, a lot of the response to the draft show was very negative. So, to conclude, I've been Jack from WhatCulture.com. I hope you enjoyed the show, even if it wasn't the best. You know, it changes things up. Maybe they'll make the most of it, who knows. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack_the_jobber. Not much more to say. I'll see you soon.
this Monday. These men are built to destroy. After their brutal match on Loaded, Primate faces off against the Iron Man Joe Coffey in a no-holds-barred match. WWE Cruiserweight Classic contender Noam Dar gets a shot at the Ring of Honor World title as he takes on champion Jay Lethal. Rampage goes one-on-one with Big Damo as these two monsters compete to become the first ever WCPW champion. Built to Destroy, airing July 25th exclusively on WhatCulture Wrestling.